And so, 10 years passed.
Mark, dear, did it come in?
The cloth-wrapped wood rested in Mark's arms. As the heavy material dropped, Mark unveiled a Chilean surrealist painting by Roberto Matta. The impressions of golden figures stood out on cool coloured backgrounds. The work had a proportional sense of balance. Gasping, Anaya reached out to touch its image.
Touching it with your hands may discolor it.
She snatched back her fingers. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at the artwork.
It's just so wonderful.
This work has only been in private collections. I'm glad we could secure it for you. What made you interested in South American art? Your home is full of Indian or Native American pieces. Warmer tones than this one.
I want to redecorate. I need a fresh change. You know what it's like. Sitting always in the same environment makes us stale. Besides, people usually update their houses every other decade. A touch here and there goes a long way. With the older pieces, I may sell a few to you.
There'll be a market for some of them. There's more interest in international works.
You should come visit. Cloud needs an excuse to show off his guitar.
The last time he took their offer, they sat around in pillows in a smoky room and talked about bigger thoughts in life while Cloud strummed soft notes. He returned home smelling of patchouli. The culture of love was a very relaxed group. He smiled.
Sure. I'll stop by tomorrow night.
A voice spoke from outside the room.
But first, he has plans with me.
I will take my leave then. Peace to you and yours, President Belmonte.
As to you, esteemed Anaya.
Belmonte took her hand and lightly kissed her knuckles. Anaya left with her painted prize.
She is a fine leader, a good example for the community. Too bad the same can't be said about that rogue Damien. Talk is that he's chatting up new humans. I seriously hope he doesn't plan to expand his group too soon.
He continued when Mark shrugged.
Tradition is that a vampire should at least wait 40 years before he changes his first tyro. Most I know wait a whole century first. There are too many risks, especially from hunters. It's not good for him to be so reckless.
You sound like the professor when you say that.
It's the enforcer's job to care. Leaders of vampire communities should care too. It's just we usually let everyone to their own devices. Even if we disapprove of a group's choices, as long as they don't break the code, they are untouchable.
As his home wasn't far, they travelled back to Belmonte's mansion. Upstairs, they climbed until they entered his salon. He brought out an easel and motioned for Mark to sit. He covered himself with a white outfit and a large puffy Renaissance hat. Mark raised an eyebrow.
I always paint better when I wear clothes from my time. They are loose and comfortable. Ah, and the smell of the oils. It takes me back. They don't smell as earthy now. Back then, we ground them ourselves. Used bug shells, minerals, dyes procured from under the sea.
And lead and a few poisons.
What can I say? I am a man who enjoys modern convenience. I don't mind using the newer paints.
So explain again, why do I have to do this?
It is a tradition of the Society of the Arts to have me paint each of our members. I wait until I get to know you before I create them. I want the nuances of each member's personality to come through. Now, hold still. You may move your eyes, but not your head.
On the other side of the salon's room, each Society of the Arts member had a painted portrait. Their realism was uncanny. It was as if their faces were looking out of the frames and staring back at him. What made these unique was that every portrait was not simply a painted portrait. No, the artist captured their personalities and their happiest moments. Charlie wore white African robes, and Mark wondered if it was from his time in Dahomey. He looked relaxed as he held a horned instrument in his hand. His eyes twinkled as though he shared a secret with the painter. There were some portraits of other society vampires, whom he only met once before. He noticed a painting of Mrs. Violet,
I saw another painting of Mrs. Violet in the ballroom. It looks so real.
Belmonte winced and gave a wry smile.
They are a work of love.
Mark glimpsed at another painting. It was one of the professor. He stood proudly in an old office, wearing what appeared to be a suit from the 19th century. Mark's eyes widened. There was someone seated next to the professor. Mark read the inscription on the frame. Enforcers Stephen Michelson and Andre Garnier. Belmonte followed Mark's eyes.
Your grandfather, I suppose. He was Steve's progenitor.
The elderly man's eyes were wide but emotionless. Deep, dark circles weighed heavily on his features. His long, light hair was disheveled and partly fell into his face. He looked nothing like the paintings of the society members. Garnier didn't wear a ring on his pinky finger. There was a sad sternness to his face.
What happened to him?
Eventually, that vampire died. But that's Steve's story to tell, not mine.
One of the society donors came in through the side door, smiling.
Well, I'm about finished here. Would you care for a fresh drink tonight? I have 2 of my donors present today. They don't mind being bit.
They're willing donors and they're not the twins. So they're not being taken advantage of. So, yeah, I think we will. We'll have a drink.
Thank you.
Glasses clinked and the chatter grew inside the small greasy restaurant. It had been many years since Mark had taken Jodie for their first date. He tried to remember the taste of a milkshake, but it eluded him. He remembered what creamy could taste like, but that was all he could think of. He even forgot what flavour they had. Mark had stopped eating entirely. It wasn't worth the stabbing stomach pain or the vomiting. Across from him, Charlie played with his soda straw. The waitress asked if they wanted another Coke, but they declined. She said nothing as she glanced at their appetizer with the food pushed around the plate. She couldn't know. They were hungry for something else. They were biding their time as people would leave the nearby bars and dance clubs. People assumed downtown was safe as they walked late into the night.
So, how's business?
Private jet rides to places unusual, bartering for priceless art, meeting beautiful women. All in all, not bad, my friend.
Have you spoken with Steve?
The professor's busy as usual. He got the opportunity to dig up some ancient Roman ruins in France. It was all he could talk about before he left. Now that he's there, I barely hear from him. You know how he is. Once he's in a dig, he'll be lost within his own work.
That sounds like him. At least he's happy.
What about you?
I'm doing fine. Been playing at a lot of gigs. I stopped partying at the fraternities. Someone will notice I haven't changed. Some of those former frat boys are buying homes in the area. I think it'll be time for the society to rest for a bit. Step back from the world. We do this every other decade or so. It's a family tradition.
The smell of perfume caught Mark's attention.
Sorry, Charlie. I'll catch you at your next gig.
A knowing smile crossed his friend's face.
Good luck, Mark.
Stepping up to the bar, Mark ordered a cherry Coke. To his left stood an attractive woman about 35. She traced her finger around the rim of her glass as she daydreamed. She was so beautiful with her full scarlet lips, a short red dress with black stockings, and quarter-length lace-up boots. Mark offered to buy her a drink. She dismissed him with a laugh.
Sorry, kid. The youngest men I date are 25.
Mark pushed down a protest. He wanted to tell her that she was about his age, that he was a mature person, that he wanted to be seen, not dismissed. He knew better. To every human, he looked forever 23. It was hard to date a mature woman. Long gone were the days of dating Jodie. He hadn't seen or heard from her since college. People move on with their own lives. The woman surprised him. Despite her rejection, she still talked with him. She might have been lonely or bored. An hour passed and Mark offered to hail a taxi cab for his new friend, and they left the bar together. The city changes at night. The cold autumn air nipped and gave Mark an excuse to walk closer as they sidestepped around the steam rising from drainage grates. Lights brightened streets and sidewalks while cars' tail lights glowed as they passed. Walking down a broken sidewalk, she tripped. Mark caught her around her waist. She thanked him before picking up her pace.
You surprise me. You're more mature than your age.
I hear that all of the time.
I don't know. You weren't what I expected. I wouldn't mind if we met again.
Wow, mature women were more direct. It was a refreshing change of pace. Mark led her to a side road where he knew from a decade of experience they could always find a taxi cab. But that night was the exception. Turning the corner, they found none. She frowned.
I guess we'll have to wait a bit here.
Mark stepped towards her. At first, she awkwardly stepped away, then allowed Mark to stand closer. There was a pause as her eyes widened in surprise, and she realized that what Mark wanted as he leaned closer. She closed her eyes, waiting for a kiss. Wrapping his arms around her, Mark instead bit into her neck. At first, she tried to push away. Then she relaxed and hummed.
What are you doing?
A feeling of guilt came to him. It had been a long time since he drank from someone who was not a donor. This month, many of the donors were waiting with their families, so he was on his own. He was thirsty. If he waited too long, he would fall into bloodlust. Dubious feedings like this were his only way. He knew it was wrong. However, feedings like this are accepted by the vampire code. His arms pricked. It felt as though there were eyes on him from the shadows. Pulling away from her skin, Mark realized that there was another human heart pounding nearby. Someone saw them. The faint sound became quicker. Looking side to side, Mark saw no one on the street. Whoever saw them must be standing in the alleyway. A taxi pulled up. Torn between finding out who watched them and keeping calm, Mark opened the cab door and gave the driver a 50 with directions to drive her home before slamming the door. Mark stood alone on the sidewalk. He pretended to casually look around. In the alleyway, there was a figure huddled in a corner. He was right. He had to act soon. With slow steps, he made his way to the side street. Gasping, the witness ran. Mark wouldn't let him escape. Sprinting after him, he followed the dirty hooded jacket around the corner of an old building. The small figure knocked over a trash can. Spinning, Mark leaped out of the way, his foot squishing a slick of sticky mud, his shoes losing their grip, causing Mark to stumble. Mark skid on his knees, clawing through a nasty goop to pick himself up. He continued running. He didn't see the small figure. Had he lost him? Mark waited. There was no sound. Damn it. How could this happen? Mark knew he just screwed up the society's number one rule. Don't let any human but donors know about vampires. If this got out, no. Mark didn't want to think about the consequences. President Belmonte had told stories of when the society was hunted. Charlie still had nightmares about it. Mark didn't want to be the next vampire running away from mobs and stakes. Very faintly, Mark heard a frantic heart. It sounded so small and fragile that it would explode at the rate it was beating. Mark looked closely where the sound was coming from and noticed a hunched-over figure, panting. His small breath made wisps in the night air.
I know you're there! Give it up!
The shadow broke free from the wall. Mark chased him again. The small figure turned right, then dodged beneath a low-fallen beam before squeezing through a fence. Mark went after, snagging his shirt sleeve on the wire. With a curse, he freed the caught material and climbed over the fence. By the time Mark saw him again, he dodged into another alleyway. Mark knew the area well. He could cut off his escape. Instead of following him, Mark leaped a few high fences, catching up with him as he rounded the bend. The small figure yelled as he slid to a stop and tried to run back the way he came. He didn't get far. Tackling him, Mark forced him to the ground. He kicked Mark in the gonads. Mark crouched down as sudden pain and nausea filled him. That is one way to stop any man, even a vampire. As he scrambled away trembling, the hood of his jacket fell back and revealed the boy's face. Mark reached out, caught his leg and jerked, yanking the boy back to him. Screaming, the boy tried to fight Mark off.
Get away from me! Somebody help!
Calm down, kid!
Mark ordered through his teeth as he tried to think past the pain. As the pain ebbed, Mark managed to grab both the boy's arms to stop him from hitting. The kid fought harder and started to kick his shins. What was this kid?
No! Let me go! I saw what you did to that girl!
His heart sounded like he was going to burst from its chest. As he stood shivering, his breath rose in thick clouds with every word he spoke. Mark became unnaturally still. He had to make a decision. Fast.
Are you going to kill me?
I can't kill the kid.
Why do you think I'll kill you?
Because you're a vampire.
He whispered. His small cracking voice echoed between the buildings. Smart brat. If I let him go, he'll tell people. I don't want to kill him and I don't want to bite him. I have no need to bite him. I just bit that woman. I could kidnap him or I could try and convince him to come with me. I don't want to be mean to a kid. Matt looked at the boy's filthy layered clothes.
Where do you live, kid?
Like I'm telling you.
Nowhere, huh?
Sure, I have a place. I just don't feel like going there now.
He avoided making eye contact. His heart skipped a big beat. Liar.
Well, you can't stay here tonight. The temperature will drop below freezing.
Mark couldn't believe what he was about to offer. He was going to be breaking so many rules. But at this point, what could be worse? Why does Mark wish to take Johnny?
If you know somewhere you can stay, I'll take you there. Or you can stay at my place tonight if you'd like. You can take a hot shower and sleep in a warm bed.
Depending whether the kid decided to stick around, Mark figured he'd eventually tell the society about his discovery later. Shifting his feet, the kid took a long look at Mark.
And I don't owe you anything?
Shit. What kind of life had he lived before?
Nothing.
You won't bite me?
No, I don't bite kids.
The child brushed back the hair from his face and his blue eyes searched Mark.
You won't ask for my blood?
I won't ask for your blood.
And you don't plan on making me one of you, right?
A real fear crossed his face at the moment. Mark touched his hand over his heart.
I promise that I will never bite, turn you, or ask for a blood donation. Now and until the end of my life.
Is that a long time?
Yes, vampires live much, much, much longer than humans. But I'm a baby vamp, I guess. And not really that old. Just keep what I am a secret, okay? My name's Mark Delaware.
Delaware? Like the state? Okay. I'm Johnny.
How old are you?
13.
Great. He wasn't even old enough for high school. Mark wondered how someone so young could end up on the streets. Ugh. He hoped his crazy idea to let him stay over wouldn't bite him later.
What about you?
A little older than 30. Like I said, I'm a young vampire.
It's a deal. I'll go with you. You're right. I have nowhere else. And you did make a promise.
Well, that surprised Mark. Mark wasn't sure if he heard him right. He wasn't sure if he'd agree if he was in his shoes. He wouldn't trust a vampire so easily. But then again, he wasn't half-starved, in filthy clothes without shelter. Mark wondered if the kid was too tired to try to escape or if he'd just given up the moment he was caught. Mark watched him shake with the cold, then decided it'd be better to just focus on getting his witness out of there and into his custody. Johnny kept some distance behind Mark as they walked to where Mark had parked. It was a 1990s American-made two-door black truck, without a cab. He made a face.
What? This is our ride? It's so old. I thought vampires had money and stuff. Aren't you all supposed to be rich?
Are you coming or not?